Hi everyone. It's February the 20th. I have another video for you. I'll start right in here reading. It's titled EU Exodus, the End of the European Union. The End of the European Union, the No Brexit Deal, the Start Sign for the RV Implementation, Knowledge is Power. It's quite a read, so it might take me 2 videos, and I'll try not to go too fast. The EU has grown into a malignant economic cancer. Will the fall of the EU be the biggest event in modern-day financial history? Most likely, yes. When the Brexit domino does fall, it will unleash a series of unstoppable events that will culminate in the fall of the EU. Most likely, the majority of people, at least many of them, have no idea how radically this shaking out process is affecting their prosperity. The entire global economy is going to suffer a massive transformation because today's markets are so interconnected. As information travels much faster, the effects of any big economic shock will immediately flood across the planet, across the world. In other words, no one, wherever they may reside on the planet, will be safe just because they don't live in Europe. The EU experiment has grown into a malignant economic cancer. And like all malignant cancers, this one has spread throughout the entire Union, causing great suffering for every single citizen. And that's why so many European voters want to try something. Anything, as long as it's different from what the EU is doing now, and as long as their financial sovereignty is guaranteed, based on autonomous arrangements and homegrown culture. Think about it this way. Once the EU nations introduce their own asset-backed currency again, the corrupt, Rothschild-owned and controlled EU will disintegrate. This will grant every nation their own tools to abandon the Eurozone straitjacket rules. In turn, nations will regain their sovereign independence instead of dictating the severe restrictions on freedom of action or expression by the unelected EU clowns. All nations will be able to rightly reclaim what never should have been sacrificed in the first place, the right to govern themselves. Commonly, presidents, prime ministers, congresspersons, and parliamentarians worldwide contradict the democratic will of their nation's voters by refusing to support legitimate referendum results. Strangely, their treasonous actions continue without serious reprisal or punishment by voters. This emboldens them to continue. The reality of referendum votes cast and the procedure of democracy does not bode well for the people of the United Kingdom, their future as a nation, or their hopeful return to sovereignty. Once declared, Brexit will become like Grexit, on the road to oblivion. The No Brexit Deal. The British don't want an unelected bunch of individuals telling them what to do. The EU is owned and run by the Rothschilds' crime cabal, and they are now in deep panic. The EU Council thought they had the situation under control, but they now realize the people are taking back control. These unelected puppets don't want a no Brexit deal, because it would expose them. Meanwhile, the EU Commission slashed the economic growth forecast because their central bank economy is slowing. It is hitting a tipping point where the entire system could implode on its own weight. The puppets in Brussels are afraid, scared, and panicked as they realize they have lost control. Their panic is palpable in their tweets. European Council President Donald Tusk recently took a swipe at some Brexit backers in Britain, wondering out loud what special place in hell might be reserved for those who have no idea how to deliver the country's exit from the European Union. Tusk tweeted the following: "I doubt Lucifer will welcome them. After what they did to Britain, they would even divide hell. His insult was met with an avalanche of comments. It is another confirmation that the EU puppets are completely out of touch with the people they claim to represent. They don't care about ordinary people, but only about themselves. Nigel Farage sums up why they are so afraid and nervous about a no deal. Brussels bureaucrats are scared of a no deal. They claim an ensuing recession. They don't want the no deal to happen because they themselves will be exposed. This is why they are not budging on the proposal for the deal. Every time they mention disastrous consequences, if you leave the EU, the economy will implode, or similar fear-mongering scenarios. One must be aware of the fact it is always the opposite of what they state. It is projection they are demonstrating. It is all about what the EU is going to experience resulting from their very own disastrous policies and from the way they run the system. What they are truly afraid of is that the UK, once out of the EU, will prosper. Leaders across the European Union offered a united chorus of no to Britain's belated bid to negotiate changes to the Brexit divorce deal, so Prime Minister Theresa May could regain the backing of her Parliament. Back in London, PM May acknowledged that her government hasn't decided exactly how it will change the deal to address British lawmakers' concerns about the Irish border. Ireland border issue. Ireland obstructed the deal by expressing fear about border controls, complicating the Northern Ireland issue even further, which was done on purpose. Specifically initiated by the Irish Prime Minister, Leo V. The so-called backstop is designed to preserve the open border between Northern Ireland and EU member state Ireland, in light of the fact that PM Theresa May has insisted that the UK does not remain either in the European single market or the customs union. In the meantime, the Irish Prime Minister Leo V. 40 has been interrogated by the Earth Alliance for deliberately trying to thwart Brexit on February the 7th. He is the son of an Indian immigrant who admitted to being gay, becoming Ireland's first gay prime minister after he was voted leader of the country's main governing party in June 2017. To avoid his deportation to Gitmo, he agreed to resign as Irish Prime Minister in March next year, using the excuse of ill health. Like Obama in Gitmo, V sang like a canary and gave the locations of the last two Cabal underground facilities in Ireland and Wales. He also gave details of Cabal operatives operating at the European Commission in Brussels and at Westminster in the United Kingdom. Germany, the EU powerhouse, is crumbling and heading for the EU exit. The German economy is the largest on the European continent, larger than those of the UK, France, and Italy. Germany is the pivot around which all other member nations revolve, and under Angela Merkel, it has consistently been driving in high gear to strengthen the union at almost any cost. But now Merkel herself is headed for the exit doors, and in her wake, powerful forces are pushing harder than ever for Germany's withdrawal from the EU. If Berlin decides to leave the EU, or even if it just shifts into neutral, it will inevitably set off a rapid chain reaction of withdrawals by other EU members. Even more so now that the factory orders are plunging at the highest rate seen since 2012. The European economy is hitting a wall, and the ECB is stuck, and there isn't a way out of this. The surging Alternative für Deutschland Party, AfD, voted to campaign for the country's exit from the EU. They also want to shut down the European Parliament in its entirety. Anyone who thought the party would always remain on the fringe of German politics was shocked to learn that in 2018 it had become the second most popular party, even outdoing the mainstream Social Democratic Party, SPD. To oppose this movement, the EU responded with the help of the Soros-sponsored radical German Antifa that published on their website Indymedia their 2019 detailed election strategy for the assassination of specific AfD politicians as part of their 2019 Euro election campaign. God help us all. Germany has done the most to build a united Europe, but it is clearly now ready to leave the EU. Italy. Anti-immigration Deputy Prime Minister and Interior Minister Mr. Salvini is evidently calling the shots. Meanwhile, his alliance is firing strongly against Brussels, and with good reason, as Brussels is attempting to impose rules on Italy's budget, while the same rules do not apply equally to all EU member states. The economic hardships in Italy go even deeper than this, because 100% of all Italians have suffered a loss in disposable income coinciding with the period of its membership to the Union. Disposable income means income after taxes and transfers. Put simply, a depletion has occurred in their take-home spending money. This is total economic destruction of an entire country in real terms. There's simply no other way to put it. This is the reason why tens of millions of Italians want to leave the EU. Minister Salvini is in the process of stopping open borders activists by telling them he will send all migrants to live in the activists' home. He is suggesting to have the migrants housed with the people that want them in the country, letting them pay for it. He is now being confronted by leftists who call him a murderer for rejecting mass immigration to Italy. But Salvini has turned the tables by asking the leftists for the names and addresses of everyone wanting to take in migrants so that they can be sent to them. And he tells them that the real murderers are the migrant smugglers who buy weapons and drugs with their ill-gotten gains. I'm going to stop here. I'll pick up in part 2 where I left off. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you in the next video. God bless.